Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The 117th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine has passed. For several weeks now, the fighting has concentrated in the Donbass, where the Russians have concentrated most of their forces and equipment. During the invasion, since the 24th of February, the Russian army has lost almost 34,000 soldiers, including about 200 in the last 24 hours alone, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine announced today. Ukrainian troops have successfully repelled enemy attacks in the vicinity of Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, Avdiivka and Krasnohorivka. In addition, successful counterattacks by Ukrainian soldiers in the Zaporizhzhia region have forced the command of the Russian troops to redeploy additional units there. The Russians will probably strike with more force this week. We are ready for it. The occupiers gather forces in the direction of Kharkiv and the Zaporizhzhia region. They are shooting our fuel infrastructure again and want to deprive us of supplies in this way. Of course, we will answer to that. Ukrainian authorities are constantly calling for additional military aid. The West has supported the fighting Ukrainians almost from the first hours of the conflict, but the equipment made available is, in Kiev's opinion, insufficient. If we don't get weapons, it's okay, we will fight with shovels. But we will defend ourselves, because this war is a war for our existence. Yesterday morning, the residential area of Donetsk was under heavy fire. The bombing is aimed at pushing Ukrainian troops out of their positions. We didn't open the shop today. You couldn't go outside from 8 in the morning. They were shooting the entire time. The appalling noise was indescribable. I can't say exactly what the bullets hit. The shards kept falling on us. Since the 24th of February, almost 4,200,000 people have been cleared at the border crossings from Ukraine to Poland. In the future, even more refugees may reach Poland because the fighting in Donbass is intensifying. Many people decided to leave their homes only 4 months after the start of the war. Now there is no electricity, gas or water in Bakhmut, and the shelling is still going on. Life is extremely difficult, so we decided to leave, to save myself, my children and relatives. Meanwhile, yesterday, Eamon Gilmore, the European Union's representative for human rights, launched his fact-finding mission to Ukraine. Its purpose is to collect evidence of violations of international humanitarian law committed by Russian troops.
When we talk about war crimes, we talk not only about those who committed the crime, the direct crime, on the spot and in location. They, of course, have responsibility. But we're also talking about those who are in the chain of command, if necessary, right to the very top. But that has to be pursued by investigation of those who are carrying it out.
For many Ukrainian families, the foreign holidays planned for the turn of February and March have become over 100 days of wandering. The outbreak of an armed conflict in their country made their planned return impossible. For Ukrainians in this difficult situation, the Egyptian authorities provided free hotel accommodation. We did not know what could happen next, where we would go. After all, there were no return flights. It turned out we could stay at the hotel, but I'm still wondering where I'll be staying later. The Ukrainian troops suffer losses, but taking into account the differences in military potential, thanks to their tenacity, they severely decimate the invaders and destroy their equipment. So far, the aggressors have lost, among others, over 34,000 soldiers, 1,477 tanks, and 181 helicopters. The Russians are struggling with personnel. They intend to send T-62 tanks to the fight, and this will make them need even more people. I'm not optimistic about this. I believe that the conflict will continue for a few more years. The European Commission has so far imposed on Russia 6 levels of sanctions. According to the findings of Brussels, the assets so far confiscated amount to €12.5 billion. Ukraine's political partners support its fight against Russia in the military and diplomatic fields. Meanwhile, the Kremlin does not intend to negotiate and give up its military goals. President Andrzej Duda is taking part in the summit of the Three Seas Initiative. The leaders of 12 countries located between the Baltic, Adriatic and Black Seas are discussing aid for Ukraine, which is defending itself against a Russian invasion. It's also another opportunity to talk about Ukraine's status as a candidate for membership of the European Union and counteracting the famine that is threatening the world as a result of the Russian blockade of Ukrainian ports. During the summit, there was discussion on how to support Ukraine with the export of grain in the face of the blockade of Ukrainian ports by Russia. In addition, President Andrzej Duda pointed out how important it is to further strengthen infrastructure connections between the countries of the region, including gas and electricity connections.
Władze Ukrainy bardzo poważnie myślą.
The Ukrainian authorities are very serious about high-speed rail connections, such as the Kiev-Warsaw high-speed link, which may run through Lviv. We talk about it intensively. The leaders of the Three Seas countries announced the creation of a new type of partnership for countries aspiring to join the European Union. Today, Ukraine received such status. We maintained our conclusions on Ukraine. We will continue to stand by this country, continue to support the struggle of Ukrainians for their sovereignty, territorial unity and freedom. Ukraine fights for the values that we also believe. The United States Secretary of State pointed to the need to expand the common communication infrastructure of the Three Seas countries.
Greater energy independence will make member states less vulnerable to the Kremlin's coercion. It will deprive the Russian government of massive resources that's used to help bankroll its attack on the independence of Ukraine, not to mention several other countries in recent years.
Vladimir Putin is not just targeting Ukraine in his appalling hybrid war. He's trying to hold us all to ransom by weaponizing hunger and Russian energy. He's gambling that the free world will tire in the face of his aggression. We are not tired, and we can never tire in defense of freedom and democracy.
If Ukraine cannot sell its crops, the countries of North Africa and the Middle East will face a food disaster. Ukraine is the fifth largest grain exporter in the world. There are already about 25 million tons of grain in the war-torn country. By the autumn, this could be as high as 75 million tons. We know that this is a group of connected vessels because the economic crisis in Africa means increased migration, and in a moment another wave of refugees at the borders of Europe. Europe is already struggling with inflation and high prices, and forecasts in this regard are not optimistic. In turn, granting Ukraine the status of a candidate country to join the European Union was a subject of consultations before the Thursday summit of the European Council. They were attended by prime ministers and the head of the council, Charles Michel. We have defined the enormous challenges facing the government and local government in all European countries. Those countries that will be able to work out a better path out of this crisis in 6 months, will not only come out unscathed next year, but will be able to attract investors and capital for new jobs better than others. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, thanked President Andrzej Duda for his support in granting Ukraine EU candidate status. A truly historic week is about to begin with the European Union's response to Ukraine's candidate status. We already have an almost positive decision from the European Commission. A response from the European Council is expected at the end of the week. 4 days after Russia's attack on Ukraine, Kiev submitted a formal application for membership of the European Union. Apart from Ukraine, Moldova received a positive recommendation in applying for the status as a candidate country. Georgia's request was assessed negatively. The war is long, which means that the effective defense of Ukrainians caused such a creation of social and media pressure, and these individual governments must take it into account. The subject of the development of the joint transshipment infrastructure of Poland and Ukraine was the subject of the conference of the head of the Chancellery of the Prime Minister, Mikhail Dvorchik, and the Ukrainian Minister of Infrastructure, Oleksandr Kubratkov, at the border crossing point Korchovo-Krakowiec. Today, 5 additional check-in points for trucks have been launched, which means that we have managed to double the check-in points for the trucks from 5 to 10. Of course, we will take into account the remaining border crossing between Poland and Ukraine. Our cooperation is not just a matter of our relationship, it is a question of global food security. The 2-day European Council starts on Thursday. The main topic of the debate will be the European Commission's recommendation to grant Ukraine the status of a candidate country. Local residents took to boats to search for drinking water today amid flooding in Bangladesh's Sylhet district. Monsoon rains in low-lying Bangladesh have triggered catastrophic flooding in Sylhet, leaving a quarter of its 15 million population stranded amid fast-riding waters and swollen rivers. Around 300,000 people have been moved to shelters in Sylhet, but more than 4 million people were stranded near their inundated homes, compounding the challenges for authorities to provide aid, including drinking water and medical supplies. The situation in Sylhet was worsened by waters cascading down from the surrounding hills of India's Meghalaya state, including some of the world's wettest areas like Mawsynram and Cherrapunchi, that each received more than 970 millimetres of rain on Sunday, according to government data. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.